I'm going to no 1 or 2 minutes I'll take about MMA. Okay, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it's my proud privilege to welcome you to this evening program. And you all know we've been bringing some outstanding programs to you. This program, which we are going to do it one this evening and similar one month after month, is something different and unique. And we enjoy presenting you this because this is brought to you exclusively by the Women Business Forum of MMA. And they really curate and bring in the best thought leaders, outstanding speakers to come and share their insight with you, because the idea is to inspire you, motivate you, so that you get into a lot of initiatives what is being put in place, like the one which I would like to share is MMA website guys, mentor and mentee. If you want a mentor, please do come and register. It's all for women, and even some men also wanted, please do. We'll try and identify something, but it's more focused on women. Similarly, we also have an exclusive closed Facebook group for women, and you want to send a request to MMA Facebook for women, and you will be there, part of it. You can share, you can get a lot of insights. So we also, I don't know how many of you read the business mandate for this month. This month, women, leading women, that's what we did. Is leading women means not all leading women who spoke, but women are the leaders. Women are leading in everywhere. That's why we brought in some four outstanding articles on women this month business issue, which has been very, very well appreciated. So before I call upon the speaker and Mythili to introduce the speaker and take on, let me briefly tell you what's happening in MMA in next 1 minute, so that if you have missed it in your inbox, at least you don't miss it when you want to watch it live. Now, the next event is again Women Business Forum. It's happening on 16th of November. Not to be missed event. This is the Gurgaon Mum. When women comes together, magic happens. I mean, this is a true statement, and you have to listen to this lady, how Neelam Kaushik, founder of Gurgaon Moms, how she really transformed and creating a group which has got so many people, inspiring so many, continue to inspire them. This is happening on 16th at evening at 6 p.m. Again, on 18th November, you see my background, 18th All India Management, 20th All India Management Convention, future-proof your career for success. Again, we have got some outstanding speaker, right from Jogo founder Sridhar Vembu to Viswanathan Anand, chess champion, Raskina. Then we got Google head of strategy. We have got some outstanding speakers who are meeting. I don't want to take your time. You can log in, and this is open to everybody. Please do watch. Not only the students. We expect more than 40,000 students to watch this program live on 18th of November. Then Friday, 19th of November. Again, we have the psychology of money. This is the read and grow, because we always say a leader is the great leader. And we have that subject where we got outstanding panelists to discuss on this, the psychology of money. Sangeeta Sumesh Sharma, then Raghu Radhakrishnan, CEO Managing Director of TaxMax of India, and also Kumar Subaya is the Chief Financial Officer of CEAT Limited. So not to be missed again. Monday, 22nd November, we have again a startup series with Tarun Mehta. Tarun Mehta is the founder, CEO of Aether Energy, and all that we are going to discuss is electric is here to stay, because at the end of the day, you all know what's happening on energy issues. Tarun is going to say why electric is so important, and Mr. Shankar, founder camps, will lead the conversation with Tarun. Then on 23rd November, you've got a stress management, mental and physical well-being. Two outstanding doctors are going to share their insight. Again, not to be missed. Then on 25th November, we have half a century and still at the crease. Their journey through 50 plus years of management professionals. Very interesting. We have Biju Kurian, a very senior thought leader from management, former IIM Ahmedabad. Casey John, again, director of Ramchandra Faculties. Chandilya is the chairman of Aisha Group, and Chautala Ravi Kumar is a managing director. Miss Charulata, sir. Miss Charulata Ravi Kumar is a managing director of Accenture, and she's going to be talking to us. So this is happening on 25th of November. I'll have two more before we close. Move on to the program for today. 26th, we have again modern technology. It's again very interesting. Modern technologies, boon, bane, or bewilderment. Because this is again professor from IIT Madras, Ganesh, going to be in conversation with Rajiv Venkatraman, founder of Medal. This is a very, very interesting thing what's happening in the field of technology. Then 29th, we have a conclave on positioning India in the new world order. We have a German delegation visiting MMA, and we have again outstanding speaker, Mr. M.K. Narayanan, former National Security Advisor, former Governor of West Bengal, and we got Chris Wagner, Professor Herbert Dieter, and Gunnar Wecker, all from German. They're all thought leaders. And Ambassador Raghavan is the chairman of National Security Advisor Board, former Indian ambassador to Russia, and Dr. Stanley Johnny, is international affair editor, will be moderating along with Peter Rimble and friends. So this is what is happening in November. There are so many things that are happening in November. November is always a bumper month for MMA. We have already lined up some 8 to 9 conclaves, talks, and because before Christmas, we want really exhaustive with all our events so that you can go and enjoy the Christmas and New Year, start your new beginning. Coming to today's topic, which you are all eagerly awaiting to listen to, it's very interesting, something out of box, negotiation skills for conflict resolution. We got, again, outstanding speaker, Ms Radhika Shapoorjee, and she is founder CEO of Mediation Mantra, and she will be introduced by our own chairman for the MMA Women Managers Forum, Mythili Chandrasekar. Let me briefly introduce Mythili, then I will request her to take on from me. And Mythili has over 35 years of consumer behavior brand strategy, recently retired as senior VP, only retired on paper, otherwise she's very active. She's been more active with MMA and supporting us totally for all our endeavor. And our career highlights include created thinking frameworks, models, brainstorming, created over 80 hours of training materials, published on scientific articles, co-authored Voice Within with 2 leading South Indian musicians, a coffee table book. And she also specialist in brand strategy, integrated marketing communication, insight mining, social, cultural, and a number of rich work, writing, content creation, much more, and curation. Thank you, Mythili, for supporting MMA in a big way in driving Women Managers Forum, Women Business Forum. Over to Mythili to introduce the speaker and set the context for this evening. Over to you, Mythili.
Yeah, thank you, Group Captain. Welcome once again to another evening of the Women's Business Forum. I'll start this time with talking about Radhika. Radhika is someone I've known for, I think, nearly 15 years now. And I saw her growing in a very illustrious career in public relations. And after many years in the corporate world, she's now turned entrepreneur, which is why I thought she's relevant in more ways than one to this forum. Radhika is now, you can close this, Group Captain. I just want to talk about her in a personal way. Radhika is, I have now seen her getting her own company off the ground. And this is in a very brand new or fairly new area of mediation. And we actually live in the same building. And we often, whether it's in the car park or an occasional walk around the building, I just found what she's doing extremely fascinating. She is, over the years, she has worked with, I mean, you name any leading bank, any leading multinational tech company, she's worked with all of them. And this business of mediation, I kind of began to understand that it's all about conflict and negotiation. And while, of course, her work is confidential, but I could make out that she is working with governments, she's working with CEOs, she's working with business families. She has dealt with crisis management, with sexual harassment, with media boycotts, with difficult ex-employees. It's a very wide range of kinds of conflicts that she has worked with. And as I then thought, plus on top of which, she has balanced her work life and her family life. She has 2 college-going children. I see her looking after her ailing mother. So she's doing all of that. And so I thought it's really relevant for us in this forum, because what are we interested in? Of course, conflict and negotiation and mediation is gender agnostic. Everybody needs it. So you will find what she talks is relevant to everybody. But more so for women, because the Women's Business Forum, when I think about it, there are students who want to pursue the course of their choice and choose the professions that they feel, so there may be some conflicts, maybe some conflicts with the family. Then when you have to go to work, then in the workplace, then in mid-career, when you have to balance your home and work and your children, and then as you try to break the glass ceiling, or you take a break and then maybe you try to be an entrepreneur, and then you have financial negotiation. All the time, we are navigating and negotiating these barriers and challenges. Parents, siblings, bosses, spouses, children, even our maids and cooks, we have to get around, and we are quite, end of the day, we are quite good at getting things done. Yeah. But I know a lot of women do feel that they are perhaps not as good negotiators as men are. Maybe, maybe not. So I thought we should hear Radhika tell us about what is conflict in the first place? What are the roots of conflicts? Why do they happen? And what are the skills, the soft skills that we should keep in mind as we navigate and negotiate our way through this journey of ours? So over to you, Radhika.
Thank you so much, Mythili. And thank you so much, Group Captain, for inviting me to this wonderful forum. And I must tell you that this topic is actually very close to my heart. The 30 years that I worked, and Mythili, it's interesting that you talked about all the conflicts and the negotiations that happen, and I resonated with each and every one of them myself. And I hope to share some of my insights, and I hope to share some good tips and tricks that you can actually use every day, starting from after this session. So the topic for today is negotiation skills for conflict resolution. And I thought, let's go back to what is the meaning of conflict. Conflict is a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one between people, across groups, across countries. And usually it is a clash of ideas, opinions, or interests. And then a conflict spiral happens when a small difference, which is a small difference of opinion, when it is unresolved, becomes a dispute. And when that dispute becomes unresolved, it becomes a conflict. And when a conflict is unresolved, many conflicts happen because you've not resolved any of the disputes or the conflicts behind it, and it can actually escalate into wars. So if a small disagreement at home can actually escalate into what we are seeing today, so many different conflicts in our personal and professional lives. And so the point is that if we were to resolve the conflict when it is at a time when it is small, when the difference of opinion starts, how do we address the conflict there? And if we are able to resolve it, perhaps we could avoid the larger, bigger conflicts that come into our lives. But is it that simple? And why is it so difficult? I think that's really what I'm going to talk more about, is why is it so difficult to address conflicts? Why are there so many conflicts happening in our homes between parents and with their children over, again, different ideas, different opinions and different interests that different generations have? We are also seeing conflict escalating between states over water, over resources. We see on television political leaders with different ideologies conflicting, shouting. There's anger, there's resentment. We see business disputes over various issues. And all of these could be personal, it could be professional. And just to give you a small number, our courts will only take 408 years to resolve the cases across our country if there was not a single case filed from today. So what are we seeing? That obviously in our lives, be it in business, personal, professional, conflicts are not getting resolved. Justice delayed is justice denied. And that is something that I think is a big conversation that is happening across the world. So how can we understand the roots of conflict in a deeper manner? And let's understand actually the anatomy and psychology of conflict. So what are its roots? Why is conflict perceived as a threat? And how can we actually transform this threat into an opportunity? And that is the essence. And I do hope that you will all take that away, is that when we think of conflict, which is actually seen as a threat perception, however, if we were to shift the way we perceive conflict, we can actually find great opportunities in which we can amicably resolve conflicts and actually strengthen relationships in a manner that you will find beautiful creative solutions in the future. I'm going to go back into the past and again go back to the roots of conflict. The greatest story about conflicts that has shaped India for sure is the Mahabharata. And it has taught our society in the form of, from comics to the actual readings to people who are advocating the lessons from the Mahabharata. It has taught us many, many lessons to in terms of how to resolve conflict. We all know that Krishna helped Arjun resolve his inner conflict. First, before he was ready to fight the Kauravas in a battle that lasted 18 days, where the Pandavas won after killing 100 Kauravas. Now, my interpretation and my lesson is that this is what we are doing in our minds first. How are we overcoming our inner conflicts so that we can actually resolve our outer demons as they come in front of us in a manner which is not destructive, but which is constructive. My work in conflict resolution has been really to help people understand their inner conflict, because when these issues are not resolved, they spill into the external world. So let's go and understand that better. And let's talk about conflict and fear. The perception of conflict is that it is a threat, it is an attack. And we react to that threat perception with fear. With fear, that is the root of conflict. There's a perceptible change in our biology when we feel threatened. And this goes back many, many million years ago to the beginning of humankind. Fear was a means of survival to humans so that they could protect themselves. They could protect themselves from wild animals, from nature, from rival tribes, from nature's fury. Now, all that has stopped. We are in the comforts of our home watching this session on Zoom. We have none of those physical threats. However, we do have the same instinct. The human instinct actually comes out at our workplace, in our personal lives. And when this threat happens, it is when there is a difference of opinion. And what happens? Even our loved ones can become the enemy. They become threatening. And that is when their views, their opinions are different from ours. And we see this happening, as Mythili said, it happens at work, it happens between teams, it happens at home, it happens between generations, it happens between husband and wife, it happens all around us. And I'm sure each one of the people who are here would have experienced that. So, what is this threat? This threat is really the threat to our identity. And we react to the person who can, and we react in a way so that we can protect our own identity. And I think it's important to understand what is our identity and how is that created. Our identity is protected because if a difference of opinion means that I'm not a good mother, or I'm not a good father, or I'm not a good boss at work, or I'm not a good colleague, I want to defend that position. I don't want to be seen as someone who's not good. And that is at the very core of where we experience conflict. And when we experience conflict, we experience fear. And there are only three ways in which we react. When that threat perception happens, we react in only three ways. And when I say we, it means literally 7 billion people react to fear in three ways. It is either you fight, or you freeze, or you flee. And this is a psychological, biological makeup where literally the chemicals in our brain go back to that time where we need to protect ourselves. We need to get our defenses up. Why? Because we have been taught that good must overcome evil. And this polarized view that we have all learned over generations is the fight, and the fight over good or evil actually comes into our personal lives, where each of us have a sense of righteousness. And this righteousness is talked about in the Bhagavad Gita, that we are right and the other person is wrong. This polarized view of our opinions and actions are leading to so many unresolved conflicts in our everyday life. This adversarial way to address each other, where we are unwilling to listen to the other person's point of view, and these are escalating, and the escalation happens from small differences into full-fledged conflicts between people and communities. So what is this? What is conflict and identity? What is it that this identity that we as humans have created to protect ourselves, and why is it that we feel threatened? I'm going to go a little deeper again into that. We humans have had the creativity to invent the human identity, which is distinct and unique from the animal kingdom. Countries, states, cities, businesses, offices, homes, neighborhoods are imaginary identities that we have created. And these have been created by very inventive people and leaders to protect and build defenses against the wrath of nature, other people, tribes of the past, and that basic human instinct to protect ourselves. And when these identities clash, conflict is created. And where are the seeds of this human identity sowed? It actually goes back to our family and the environment in which a child is brought up. It's interesting that every child learns how to deal with conflict from the age of 0 when they are born to 7 years. Those are the foundational years. And they watch their parents and families deal with each other, how they deal with each other. Is it in a mindful manner? Is it in a hostile manner? Is it in a threatening manner? How do they communicate? How do their family, their parents, their caregivers, how do they communicate with other family members? How do they communicate with neighbors and the community at large? What are they listening to when you come back and tell them stories about work? All these are things which children take away subconsciously. And their social skills are developed and retained in their subconscious mind, their unconscious mind. And therefore, all of you who are here today, each of you have already decided your way to deal with conflict was sown during the time that you were 0 to 7 years. So if you were brought up in a loving environment, or were you brought up in a hostile environment, or you were brought up in an environment where conflict was completely avoided, it perhaps will shape the way you will respond as an adult. Because this is the place from where various kinds of fears are nurtured. And some of the fears that I know for a fact, whether it is myself or many of my friends, family, and others have, which is the fear of failure. We've all learned that the fear of failure is one of the biggest debilitators. The fear of not being heard, the fear of losing money, the fear of health issues, the fear of death. All these fears are pretty much learned at home within the family, because that's what all of you would have watched subconsciously and consciously. And that is also what goes into shaping the way your identity is, as well as shaping the way you handle conflict. Therefore, the need to create a psychological safe place for the child and family to express themselves, to express their views in a way that differences are respected, is something that I think I would like all of you to think about. Do we have a safe place where we can express, and where we allow our family, our colleagues, and our and others and neighbors to actually come and say things which are not the same as who you are or what you stand for. Because when conflict happens and a difference arises, the first culprit is communication. There's always a breakdown of communication between two people in conflict. It could be a mom with their daughter. It could be between spouses. Communication suddenly gets blocked. It becomes difficult. The flow, the ease, suddenly there's a roadblock out there. When that happens, it makes all of us feel uncomfortable. And the feeling of fear, of not being heard, of wondering what the uncertainty of what is happening, it could be with the boss, and that fear comes in, and that is where we start reacting. It is also noteworthy that we actually view ourselves in terms of the clashes that can happen between us as individuals, me as a mother, me as is how I feel, and what is it, how is it aligned with my family agenda, with my work agenda, which is really the collective agenda, at a national agenda as well. So when there are clashes of political views, you know that there is a difference of ideology that is coming out, and we see that in social media, the kind of resentment, the kind of hatred that people have for people they don't know. Where is this coming from? This is coming from deep-rooted conflicts that have been sown by perhaps generations before against people, against communities. And I think it's really important for all of us to step back and say, what is happening around us? Why are the courts clogged up? Why are homes not the safe place it is meant to be? Or the office is not a safe place where you can discuss, you can be vulnerable and not translated into a fear of failure. These are things that I think is important, that a group like this of so many people who are at work, who are at different stages of their lives, step back and really look at, how do I respond to conflict? Do I respond with fear? Do I freeze? Do I flee? Or do I fight? What kind of an environment do I create so that people can express themselves and I'm able to respect differences, because we are inherently different as well. We all come from very different emotional worlds, and therefore that needs to be respected. So I think what I'm going to say is that conflict can be seen as a threat, but conflict is an opportunity in disguise. When conflict comes into your life, it is an opportunity, it is a teacher, it is telling you that you need to progress and move forward and evolve to a higher place. If you don't, you actually go to a lower place. But if you actually look at, change your filters of what does this conflict that could be between me and my boss, what does it really mean? Where do they come from? What are the fears that they are displacing that I should understand? How do I get into their shoes and understand where they are coming from? How do I make them understand where I'm coming from? Do I have the courage of conviction to have that dialogue, to have that flow of communication? And we are going to be talking more about that. But I'm going to tell you an interesting story. This was a while back. Two global CEOs were traveling on a plane to a long distance. It was a long distance 30-hour ride into Africa. They were both going there to find a very rare eagle who laid an egg every 10 years. And it was discovered that that egg had the solution and cure for cancer as well as diabetes. Now, the CEO who was the head of cancer, a cancer care a pharmaceutical company, and the CEO who was the head of a diabetics company, they were obviously in conflict to say, one egg, who's going to get it? But these were wise men. They decided, let's understand what are the underlying needs, what are the underlying interests, and they realized that the cure one cure for cancer lay in the yolk, and one cure for diabetes lay in the white of the egg. So they both could take the one egg and share it and address a transformational solution to their business. Now, if they had not had that conversation, if they decided to fight for that egg, if they decided to destroy value, that is something that could have happened if they had not had that dialogue, if they had not created a safe place to for each one to express what they really required. I'll also give another story that happened, one of the mediations that I did with two co-founders. Two co-founders, one senior, one 10 years younger, were in conflict for 4 years. And it took me 3 months of about 8 sessions to resolve their conflict amicably. And today they continue to work in the same organization. But at the heart of that conflict was their own inner issues coming out to address, and coming out not in a good manner, where it was an unsafe environment that had been created. But once each understood where the other came from, and that is what I was able to help them negotiate. They negotiated a new way of functioning. They negotiated a far stronger way of functioning. And the investor who got me in is a happy person. The multiple investors in that organization are happy people. Most importantly, the employees, the 3,000 odd employees who were affected by the conflict, because it did create tension within the organization, that was addressed. So the kind of value that you can actually create is immense if you understand what is behind the conflict and how can I resolve it in an amicable manner. How do I restore relationships? Because that is the potential of what a conflict can bring alive. So again, I'm going to come to the last part, that is, what is the role of communication and good negotiation skills that can actually convert a conflict into an opportunity? Because as you saw, by addressing conflict, there is understanding the other person's point of view. There is a huge opportunity in actually strengthening the relationship, for the relationship to go to the next level. I personally saw that, how each person, when you are in conflict, you are actually defending your vulnerability. When you resolve it, you get your interdependence of strengths to work a much stronger relationship, be it at work, be it at home. I can tell you that I am so grateful for having learned some of these techniques over the years, because I have applied it to my daughter, to my son, to my husband, and resolving issues when they come up is so much easier, and so much progress is made that I have set up my entrepreneurial journey is in partnership with my husband, Ms Shapoorjee, who has played a huge role in helping me understand conflict and shaping the path for my future purpose. So yes, before I go forward, Mythili, is there anything that you would like to say at this point in time?
No, I think we'll hear you out. It's just that a lot of little conflicts in our day-to-day life comes to mind. We can talk about it. I mean, okay, if you want to take a break, little things like, let's say a child spends too much time on sports, and there is a conflict between the parents. So what is it? It's fear that you will fall behind in your studies. So all you have to do is negotiate some time management and agree to some goals in both spaces, instead of just thinking that, my mother doesn't want me to do that, or I'm taking simple things. Of course, difficult conflicts are much deeper. Something like a parent not wanting their children to be out late. Why? Because you're afraid of what will happen, and because life out there, the road is dangerous. So what can you do? You can let them know when you're leaving. You can let them know the number of the cab. You can let them know the phone numbers of their parents and their, of the other friends and their parents, so that you create a kind of safety net, So what really vibes with me is that at the root of it is fear. So first we have to understand what is the fear because of which that person is objecting.
Absolutely.
That's my big takeout really, but carry on and we'll talk more when you finish.
Absolutely, Mythili. The deepest fears and the deepest fears that come is each of us wants psychological safety and security. You know, Maslow's law and the hierarchy of law, and the role of protection, the role of security, which has actually been played out by so many marketing and advertising people, is very deeply rooted in our very survival instinct as human beings. And we will talk. I think you've given, as they say, a small difference of opinion with your child when he's or she going out. Is it going out late? Negotiate for the child to understand where is the parent coming from, why are they fearful, why, and also recognizing that your child wants to be independent, that your child wants to go out. How do we also get into the shoes of the child to understand where they're coming from? So I would say go 2 steps deeper, get into the mind of the child, and your child will feel that, will feel heard, will feel wanted. Because the moment you reprimand, the moment you get upset, the moment you put boundaries which are one-sided, then they want to rebel. And understanding where that rebellion comes from and addressing it early is so much better. And it is not just one, it is every day. This is actually an everyday part of life. But I think the easiest way, and that takes me to the last part of what I'm talking about, the easiest way is to really understand what are the tricks, what are the ways in which you need to cultivate your own communication skills so that you can negotiate better. So I have, over the last couple of years, especially, I have watched videos of at least maybe 500 to 1,000 people. So I feel very blessed and full of gratitude that I could listen, read, and learn from many people who are experts in the domain of conflict resolution, from psychologists to FBI negotiators to mediators at Harvard. So people like, and out of all of them, I have chosen to talk to you about my superhero, and his name is Chris Voss. Now, who is Chris Voss? Chris Voss is an FBI negotiator, and he has written this very interesting book called Never Split the Difference. It's an amazing book and one of many books that I have read that has influenced the way I actually see conflict, and it has shifted something in just the way. And it has helped me, and I can tell you, and Mythili, you mentioned, yes, it has shifted when I was handling media boycotts. When your one of your client is boycotted by all the media, what do you do? And it was over a lunch that we were able to resolve it. And it's interesting that in that case, it was just the arrogance and the way that my client had dealt with them, which had created the block. And the simple act of inviting all of them for lunch resolved it in exactly how much time the lunch was. And we had a wonderful laugh and discussion about everything else, but the boycott was taken off within an hour of that discussion. So again, I'm going to go back, and I'm sure you will have many questions, but I'm going to summarize some of the tricks that I learned from people like Chris Voss, from people like William Ury. He is an amazing, he's written a beautiful book which is called Getting to Yes. These are amazing, deep books, but simple books, interesting books that have helped me. And I'm sure if anyone's interested, these are great books to read. But what I have taken away if I were to say there's one thing that I could that I would like to propagate, is the power of empathy. What is empathy? And I'm sure a lot of you have read about it. It's there. It's being written about. Google talks about it in very interesting ways to say, how does tactical empathy, strategic empathy work for leaders? Harvard Business School has done a huge amount of work on that. How can we be more empathetic? And what is empathy? Empathy is understanding the other person's point of view, understanding how they feel, and caring about it. The moment you do that, the entire negotiation that you will have going forward will shift. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple of tricks, which if you not even master, just apply, which can help you in the ability to understand the mindset and feelings of the counterpart. It could be your wife, it could be your husband, it could be your boss. How can you gain a certain influence if you were able to apply some tactics and tricks? The most powerful communication skill, I would say, is listening. All of you have been listening for a while, and it is the most powerful communication technique. And if you listen with your heart, if you listen with your ears, if you listen with your eyes, if you see the body language, there is so much you can identify in terms of the emotions that perhaps the other person is not expressing, the underlying issues, and they're just wanting, it's a child who's having a tantrum. But behind that, what is happening behind that? What is the emotional world behind that? I think when a parent is empathetic towards the child or the colleague or the employee, it has a completely different way. But it's not enough to just know that. What is the next part? If you have listened, the one shift that I can tell you that I have personally made, Mythili, and that has had a huge impact, is the power of acknowledgement. Acknowledging in different ways. And you can a very interesting trick that Chris Voss has taught is with mirroring. When you are talking, Mythili, and I can take three of your last words, and repeat it and mirror it, you will feel heard. So acknowledgement with the three last words that you have talked about is a very interesting technique, but most importantly, it should be said in a tone which is inquisitive, not a tone which is allegatory. So the small shift in tone can actually make the other person feel either attacked or heard. And that's all that people want. They want to be heard. Why do they want to be heard? Because they want to feel safe. They want to feel safe that they can express what they are actually feeling, and it'll be heard in the right spirit. The other, again, a great tactical tool is silence. When there is silence, somebody wants to fill it up. Let it be the other person. And in that filling up, there is so much that can be said, which you can learn so much about what the other person's true feelings are. The other way, interesting way of acknowledgement is, I think, again, a great technique which is paraphrasing. And paraphrasing is like a mirror, except that it is what you have heard and what you play back. And Mythili, you've done that a couple of times, even in this session. This is what I have heard. I took away fear as a very important key point. And I, as Radhika, feel that, oh, Mythili has heard me. She has taken something important. She has acknowledged me. I must remember that. I must thank her for that. So that's just playing back what you have heard is another very good technique in communication. And once you have heard the person out, again, important to summarize. The power of summary is also to clarify that what you have heard is what you have listened and is what the other person is saying. because one of the reactions is to jump in and interrupt and say what I want to say. What I want to say rather than what I have heard about what you have said. And again, a very, very powerful tool is calibrated questions. How do you question the other person without the person feeling attacked? Again, a very interesting trick is let your questions start with what or how. What and how will ensure that you will not get no as an answer or a single. It will get the person to elaborate. What is the issue? How are you feeling? So that opens up the space for conversation. And as I said, the first culprit of conflict is communication. And last but not least is getting to yes. And getting to yes, if at the end of the summary, you decide to agree, how do you get the other person to genuinely agree? The first yes may be just, a counterfeit. The second yes could be a confirmation. The third yes is a commitment. And therefore, if the person has said yes 3 times, they are committed to the process to implement and get to a place of agreement. So these were some of the tips and tricks that I have personally learned and applied. And I hope that was a useful session, and I'm most happy to hear out questions from you and from the lovely people on this forum.
Thank you so much, Radhika. Mr. Balraman, would you like to go?
Yeah, that was a wonderful session, really. I mean, it's very intriguing, and we would like to listen to a lot more. But just as a matter of interest and to make the session more interesting, how would you resolve the Kashmir conflict?
Wonderful question, Mr. Balaraman. The Kashmir conflict, that's a social conflict, which means that any social conflict has a past which has to be understood. As I said, the core of conflict is fear of losing territory, fear of losing identity, fear of not being recognized. And how are we recognizing the fear that exists in Kashmir? How are we responding to them? The question is that. So whether it is the conflict in Kashmir or it is the farmers that are on the roads, I think the question that one has to ask is, with what intention are we dialoguing with them, where there is a two-way communication? When it is a one-way communication, when it is arbitrary, where it is about my way or the highway, that I am right and you're wrong, there is no question of the conflict getting resolved. It needs an empathetic understanding of what is intergenerational conflict in the case of Kashmir, where there are a multitude of identities that are clashing, and it needs a neutral party to really go there, to create an environment, a safe environment of trust before the conversations can happen, and the conversations are listened to, and the conversations are acknowledged. One of the most powerful tools that I must tell you in conflict resolution is actually a heartfelt apology, a heartfelt sorry. And I think it has worked many times that I have seen over the years. And but when you take your position and you don't empathize, sorry for what has happened, sorry for how the persons feel, how the communities feel. That is something that I think is missing in just the way we communicate. I don't know if that answers a little bit of your question that you asked, a difficult question that you asked.
It does, but there are many sides to this conflict. I mean, it's not just the people of Kashmir, it is also the neighbor that we have. So
politically fueled and motivated. So
over the years, it has been fueled and motivated over the years, and wise people need to come to the table who are neutrals, who will help take each issue and go deep and say, what is going to be a resolution that is a win-win? So one of the biggest powers of mediation, a good interest-based negotiation framework, is that you will look at what are the issues of all the parties concerned. Every issue is important, and there can be a solution that can be found. And you know what is most interesting? The solution is not given by the neutral, as like we have in the courts, where the judge gives the solution. No, the solution actually is navigated with the people concerned. So even if it's a husband and wife dispute, the best solutions actually will come from the husband and wife, which can be amicably resolved, which is a win-win for both. It is only when it is a win-lose that justice is delivered to one and not the other. And that is not restorative. We need restorative justice. We need all to win.
I guess we need to open the minds, which means you ask for what are the several issues you have and solve at least those issues that are solvable. So that means, the moment other party understands you are not rigid, you are not obstinate, and you are open-minded, things become easier, right? I mean, then people need to prioritize.
to make one person argue on behalf of the other person.
Yeah.
Right? As if you are on the opposite side. What would you say if you were on that side?
Very
there are
true.
lots of things like you do like that.
Yeah, empathizing. I think Radhika's main point of empathizing is very important, I think. Yeah. Thank you, Radhika. That was wonderful. Yeah.
So I have a question
Thank you so much.
closer to home,
Yeah.
since we can't solve the big ones. I find in my experience that, and I know you don't like gender divisive questions, Radhika, but I do want to discuss a man's way of negotiating versus a woman's. And I feel in my experience, I've seen many women who, in the interest of peace in relationships and stability at home, bury the conflict. They don't even bring, they let go and they don't bring their conflict to the table. And then it simmers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what can you tell us about that?
There
are many families, as you also mentioned, where there is a tendency to not bring things out in the open, either hope that it will go away or just leave it to life, how it will play out till it becomes something a little big, But mostly one person is giving up and then living in fear,
Absolutely, Mythili.
Yeah, so
I think what this has come to me, and we've had that discussion, Mythili, on is there a difference between?
Also asked about avoiding conflicts.
Yes, I know. I've got some direct messages as well. So in the interest of, if it's come to me directly and not shared with others, I will connect with the person directly. But I will address it in a way as well. Coming back to the specific question that you asked, Mythili, which is there a difference in the way men and women negotiate? Again, men and women are merely a construct of our society. The fact is, we live in a patriarchal society. So the men and women who have grown up have watched in their 0 to 7 years the way that their parents, their caregivers, and there's this question is, how did the mother of this person respond to conflict with the father in their lives? And what happens is that we generally mirror that. That is our unconscious default mechanism. So I think unless and until we have a lot more equality in the way women can come onto the table, the fact is only 5% of women are at top positions. It is a reflection of the patriarchy. I have shifted one word when I speak, which is wherever I have read, especially the older psychologists, they refer to everything as mankind.
Yeah.
I think it's humankind.
Yeah.
So it's a shift by saying that men and women are humans. They have different roles. And I think the difference between men and women, if it is acknowledged, celebrated, and thanked, and that's what we watch. We watch our fathers, we watch our mothers. And that's what I think the biggest gift that everyone on this over here can actually trade by example. How do you address it? But specifically, how do they negotiate? They negotiate differently. I would say that men are far more hard bargainers, and that's a term that I would use for negotiation. Who's a hard bargainer and who's a soft, who has a softer approach. And generically, I've seen, one would assume that this is how it is. But having said that, women at the workplace is, they can also be hard bargainers, and it can, the roles can be completely reversed. And I think a lot of it is to do with the environment in which each of the individuals actually come from. And being conscious of that environment, and then knowing how that environment has shaped the way we handle ourselves is, I think, a very key part of the advocacy on conflict resolution. A lot of the work that I do is exactly that. Question the status quo, but question it in a way that is not adversarial. We've been taught adversarial ways. I must fight. I think empathy is something which is, where is the other person coming from? What is the fear that I'm not seeing, but I'm involved in my own fear? And therefore it becomes a conflict spiral. A long answer to your short question.
Group Captain, over to you for questions from the audience.
Yes, please. Good evening, Mr. Balraman. Good to see you. Yes. Thank you. I think, thank you, Radhika. It's very inspiring insights, and we have over 900 participants viewing this program live. And we got a couple of questions in the social media as well as in the chat box. The first question, I'll take it to the chat box. I'll just read out the question. He says, gentlemen, the chat box, he also said direct messages. At times we find that the person tries to avoid the conflict at the moment, but that's only postponing the conflict that may have high repercussions. So how can we help such person to table or communicate the conflict and resolve it then and there rather than postponing it? Actually, how do you bring the best out of the guy to come on table, resolve the issue rather than postponing it and making it more serious repercussions, or waiting for more opportunity to put the other guy down? It happens invariably in a conflict.
No, absolutely. So as I said, the reaction to threat perception and fear is freeze, and what you're talking about is freeze or flee, right? And that in itself is maybe a strategy on how they have been taught in terms of how to address conflict. I think conflict is about a much larger question of culture. So the question to ask is there a safe place, a psychologically safe place where the person concerned can actually express themselves? The reason why let's understand why are they not expressing something which is of importance, because they don't feel safe to express it.
If I may add to that, Radhika, sure. I feel, Group Captain, that person who's avoiding will never come up on his own.
Yeah.
The other person is magnanimous enough. And I think I can remember instances where I did it in the workplace, where the other person addresses the person and says, there seems to be something that is bothering you, or there seems to be some disagreement simmering between us. Why don't you say it? So I think the person who avoids will avoid. And if the opposite person is happy that person is avoiding and he or she can carry on doing what they're doing, it will continue till that person erupts, if and when. And the opposite person has the grace and the magnanimity to bring it to the table and solve it, then I think it happens. Otherwise, it will go.
Uh, Absolutely, Mythili. I think that's absolutely important, as well as I think people don't avoid conflict. Crucial discussions, difficult discussions are inherently avoided, be it at the workplace or at home. And a lot of people have grown up in an environment where they are not going to question authority. So the other thing that also happens is that if a person has come from an authoritative family background and they are unable to have that easy conversation, say with their father or with their mother, they bring the same fears to their workplace. The same fear of authority comes into the workplace, where the boss becomes the surrogate father. That's the shift in from a psychological perspective. That's what happens. So bosses become the parents, and the same family environment is recreated, and they go back into their default mechanism of how they will not question. If in their homes they were allowed to express themselves, they'll bring that to the table. So I think the larger question is, how do we understand this as leaders in the workplace? Are these conversations happening not just when there's an issue, but also generically as part of your town halls, as part of your conflict resolution is inherently there wherever people are there? It is conflict is an intrinsic part of us, and teaching that conflict can be an opportunity is of great value to organizations, that what they are not expressing may have hidden gems, that can actually help the person, the organization, and therefore maybe a place. And a lot of times a very interesting way is having the suggestion box. But the suggestion box is just a box. But if you celebrate the suggestion box, where people can give suggestions, and their suggestions or their grievances are celebrated with courage and conviction, maybe that's an institutional response to individual to individual conflict.
Captain, there is an interesting question, if I may read out from the chat box.
Please go ahead.
How to make children unlearn the negative things they learned 0 to 7 years? Maybe schools can start introducing.
Mythili, I totally agree with you. We are taught English, Hindi, maths. We are taught, so therefore we are taught language, 2 languages, and maths, and then science. But the science of emotion is what at the center of conflict resolution. So what is it that can be unlearned? I can see that. What is it that can be unlearned is, I think, again, dialogue. The fact is that we as human beings have an amazing capacity to change when we think it is good for us. So first, acknowledging to children that what they have gone through, for example, the negative, when you talk about negative things, it is rooted in anger, resentment, bitterness, aggression. And if in a family that has happened, I think the first thing is to acknowledge to the child who has experienced it, I'm so sorry, my son, daughter, and otherwise, that you have had to experience that. And I think it's a family conversation that's the only way to unlearn the negative things and shift those negative things into positive. I'll give you an example in my own experience. I always wanted to be a perfect mom. So I represented myself in a very perfect way to my kids, so that they will also be perfect. It's a horrible strategy, because eventually it comes out in different ways. The day I was vulnerable to say that I'm not perfect, that sometimes I will get angry, but please understand, behind that anger is my own fear for you, and I'm very sorry, my darlings, for having gotten angry and hurt you, because I know I have. And when I had those conversations and separately with my daughter and my son, it was a huge movement forward in creating a safe space, because, as a working mom, I have been tight for time, impatient, having other things to do, therefore discounting the feelings of my kids. And I had to acknowledge that. I'm really sorry, but I was busy. But I need to make time for you. So apply the same thing at work. Everybody is very time constrained. And I think group captain said that everybody's time constrained. But the fact is, have time for feelings. And if we have that in our minds, I think progress can be made.
Thank you, madam. Now I'll take a couple of questions which has come on social media. Then we move back to the chat box. And this is Srinivasan from Coimbatore. He says, reconciliation mediation. How cost effective is it when compared to regular course of action and the time taken? And is it a popular mode of dispute resolution in India? He feels it still is not a very popular mode of dispute resolution.
I must share with all of you that mediation has been institutionalized with the Singapore Convention. The Singapore Convention of Mediation has legitimized, and as we speak, there's a mediation law, a separate law that is being chaired. And hopefully in the coming year, that the law will come into place where mediation will become mandatory for commercial disputes. In the legislation, there are ways in which mediation should be used. Finding the right mediator, making sure that that people know how to become mediation ready, to have an institutional process that can allow for mediations to happen. Private mediations are happening as we speak. I'm also in conversation with top law firms who are aware of this legislation. People are going to leaders, I would say, are very keen to understand how do we resolve conflict, because the conflicts which have gone into litigation are simply not getting resolved. And that method, which is the adversarial method, is not working. At the heart of mediation is a collaborative process, a collaboration to find the right solution. So the need for the right mediator is of extreme importance. Talking about time, I think conflicts which are deeply rooted, it depends on the mediator, but literally from 24 hours, I've seen mediations, it takes about a couple of weeks to get the parties to become mediation ready, where the lawyers the parties will identify the right mediator. And once a good mediator comes into place, 2 sessions, 3 sessions, and a huge amount of progress can be made very, very quickly. So not just is it time efficient, it is also so cost productive, because conflict is what keeps people up at night. And you can, peace and harmony will get you a good night's sleep. So it is priceless. And I'm so happy that the gentleman from Coimbatore has asked this question. I hope everybody is listening, that mediation is a wonderful way to resolve conflict. And you have to, as we've heard, we have to have an open mind, a kind mind, a compassionate mind, that when there is anger and acrimony, there is fear behind it. Understand that fear.
Thank you. Thank you. Here's a question from Mr. Murthy from Chennai. He says, Madam, you have been a trusted advisor to political leaders, as from your profile. What's your experience dealing with the political leaders, especially when you have to advise them? And I think along with, I'll also take another question which has come in the chat box. One of the management students wanted to know from you, which is the most interesting and very in the mediation or conflict which you have done recently, which you would like to share with us.
Okay. So there are 2 questions. One is the most interesting mediations that I have done recently. What is it? And the first question is, because I immediately started thinking about the second question.
First question is, how do you advise political leaders?
Yeah. Okay. So, I'll tell you a very, 25 years of advising political leaders, CEOs, and multiple mid-level managers as well. And I give them one tip, which is, how do you tell the truth well? What is the truth? And the truth well told is a very strong message if it is given at the right time, at the right place. So sitting back, and as I say, the term I use is get onto the balcony seat and watch the game that happens below, And in that, and that's what politics is all about, is that the political leader has to be trusted. And unfortunately, the trust deficit that exists in our country and in the world for political leaders is at its lowest. And how do you win back that trust? And some of the things that we have done is, what is it that has led to that breaking down of that trust, and how can the political leader address it in a courageous manner in which they can give solutions? So understanding what is really important to people and talking about that and getting their feedback is the first step of political advice that I do give. I hope that answers the first question.
Yes,
And the second question is, what is the most recent and interesting mediation? I must tell you, this is a very difficult one, which I'm currently doing. Is a conflict between, again, a leader with his mother, with his sister, with his wife, and with his daughter. And it's a difficult mediation, but we've made progress where the resolution has happened with the mother and the sister, and the wife has come to the table and the conversations are up. And at the core of it, we are addressing the fears of what is leading to this conflict. And you know what is amazing is that once the fears have been identified, it transforms the person in terms of how they look at the same person. In this conflict, your loved ones become your enemies. And that is just a perception. Your loved ones are your loved ones. Acrimony, arguments are only a reflection of fear. And the moment you can take a balcony seat and disengage yourself from the fears, the ability to resolve conflict with your near and dear ones become that much easier. And I'm going through the process, and I'm full of gratitude. It's a sacred place that I preserve, because resolving conflict really is something which is, I would say, a gift that I have been given in terms of helping people with their deepest, darkest issues and their trust in me. So if that answers your second question.
Brilliant, madam. We got another 5 minutes. I'll try and squeeze in as many questions as possible. I'll take from the chat box. I'll combine 3-4 of them together so that for ease of answering.
One question maybe.
Yes, go ahead, Mythili.
What's the difference between, say, a psychiatrist or a psychologist and a mediator?
It's interesting because the people who I've been to have also been to so a psychologist is a counselor. A psychiatrist is one who will identify and do tests to give you, to decide whether what is the mental health that you're going through, and will prescribe medication. Whereas a psychologist is one who will counsel and help in the negotiation process with the person. The difference is that they will listen. They are the listeners. In the process of mediation, there is a certain element of nudging towards a solution. A mediator is a psychologist will speak to one side of the story. A mediator speaks to all sides of the story. So what eventually comes in terms of the common ground that the mediator is able to, a skilled mediator can bring to the common ground, is the point of view, the feelings and the truths of everybody. Whereas a psychologist is going to only be able to hear one side of the story and help that one person. If that answers your question, Mythili.
Unless both of them go.
Yeah. So if it's a joint session, I would say that there's a lot of mediators need to have a deep understanding of psychology to be able to mediate well as well, because that's a huge part of the process, the small steps of understanding psychology, communication, law, all of it comes, it's an inflection of all of it depending upon where it is.
Yeah.
So, but at the very core is a deep understanding of human behavior is what makes for a good mediator at a very first step.
Thank you.
Fundamental to everything, I think, is calm listening.
That's what she said, yeah.
The first most powerful communication tool is And that's why God has given us one mouth and 2 ears.
Well said.
I will take another 2 questions quickly, madam, as I mentioned to you. Here is from a supply chain profession. He says, how do I negotiate my price? There is another gentleman, he also wants to know, how do I use my emotional intelligence as a method to get the price controls? How do I get them? Then can you give some positive example to handle conflict while negotiating the term cost? It's all price negotiation, what they would like to do it. I think maybe you would like to share quickly, how do you negotiate a price? Simple.
I think, again, price and cost is to do with money, is to do with a fear of money. Again, go back to fears. Who's getting a better price? Who's negotiating? How much of it is going to go into performance parameters of each of the people involved? When you stop seeing the other person as a human, and you're only seeing them as a commodity in which I need to get the price down, one has to ask these questions. What does price and money mean? And what's the balance in the relationship that you want to have with the parties? My understanding, and having I was the head of a organization for 9 years, and we dealt with a lot of people. Pricing was an intrinsic part, and unfortunately, it is so commoditized that a number is so much more important than the relationship. A number can define so much more than what is the human potential of that partnership. And, it comes down to that. So I think I'm from supply chain, a supply chain management. I think you have to look at a holistic view of the strengths of the organization and the people who are coming to the table. A far more holistic view is what is that price value equation?
Value.
So what is the price value equation? The value in what are you going to gain? And I really think that needs a definitive shift in mindset, because it's only become a number. And so it becomes very, very, the ledge of negotiation is very small. But again, any negotiation, one has to understand both sides of the story.
Thank you.
I know I haven't answered that question. Question.
Good, madam. Here's a question from Mr. Francis from Chennai. He says, madam, in your view, what is the common cause of conflict? Is it ego, or low self-esteem, or lack of understanding? From your experience, which is the most common thing which leads to conflict?
I give all three, but it's about which step comes first. So the heart of conflict lies in ignorance, not knowing the other person and their fears. So not knowing and ignorance is the first step. Then comes the ego is part of our identity. So we then want to protect what we don't know. So that's the next step. The ego comes in next, and definitely forms a sort of a block where you are not going to communicate because you're protecting your inability or the lack of understanding and your fears. And you talked about ego, and you talked about
low self-esteem.
And low self-esteem, I think, is a inherent problem. What is low self-esteem? It's about understanding yourself. And ourselves are, I have this very interesting way in which I say everyone who's out here is wearing a cap, CAP, the child in you, the adult in you, and the parent in you. And when the parent in you is very, very strong, the child in you becomes weak, and that is where low self-esteem resides. Because your adult part, your balanced adult part, is not allowed to emerge. And so that in itself is an important part of resolution, to understand yourself so that you can uplift your own esteem. You leave it to others to uplift it, but actually the power of the self is with yourself. And sometimes we give that power away. Take back that power and raise your self-esteem on your own terms.
Brilliant, madam. One last question for this evening. We have got a couple of students, MBA students, watching this program now. what's your advice to students watching this program who really want to pursue their career in the field of reconciliation, negotiation, conflict resolution? Is a law degree a mandatory requirement to pursue a career in resolution and conflict dispute resolution?
Well, currently, as per the Supreme Court and what we have as the criteria is that you have to to become a recognized mediator. You need a minimum of 10 to 15 years of being a leader, and within that you can be a lawyer. But studying law, for example, I haven't studied law, but I've been a leader, so I have trained to become an accredited mediator with the Singapore government, with the Indian School of Arbitration and Mediation, and conflict resolution is first resolving the conflict of people. But many a time I take the support of a lawyer to ensure that if there is a mediated settlement, that it is as per the parameters of law. So definitely, I take that help, but that is a secondary part to actually the people conflict that needs to be resolved.
Certification as of now.
Certification, yeah.
Interesting insight, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think that's what we have time for. The thing, there's so many questions, and most of the things you addressed them in your lecture. Over to you, Mythili, for your closing comments, Mr. Balram, if you got. Meanwhile, we'll take a feedback. Gentlemen, can you put a feedback form, please? Thank you. Go ahead, Mythili.
No, just to ask Radhika to be a part of our mentors roster. Should anyone want to reach out to you for any advice or any future dialogue?
I would be most honored and privileged to do that. I think I know that there were many other questions that are asked, and I'm happy to share deeper tips. I had to, in a way, be quite superficial in today's talk and just go through it. But yes, working with people and helping them to practice it. There's a theory and there's a practice. I'm absolutely there. If there are any questions that you send to me on paper, I'm happy to answer it otherwise as well. And you can share it. And I'm happy to support you, help you in every which way. You've been such wonderful people that, that's really something I look forward to.
Thank you, Radhika.
Thank you, Radhika. And thanks to Mr. Balraman. He is a force behind initiating the Women Business Forum. So we are having so many programs. He is the one who is thought behind, and Mythili is the one who is driving it. Thank you so much, Radhika, for sparing your valuable time and sharing insight in the subject, which is very rarely discussed, because very, very interesting, very, very critical, but very rarely discussed. And you shared fantastic insight, which I'm quite sure a large number of people will benefit out of your the input what you have shared with us. And as a token of our appreciation, since you are separated by the distance, is what you could do on your behalf for sparing your valuable time. We would like to present on your behalf. We give masks and we give we do a lot of help to the people who are in need of them. We go to the various areas around us, give them. Sundar, do you have a slide with you? Sundar, you're not there.
I'm here. Just a minute. I'm doing it. Just a minute.
So if we show it to you, we'll know. You can take a picture of that. You can share with them, so it will be a night memorable memory for you. And in the meanwhile, this is what we do. Actually, we would like to present on your behalf. 300 face masks to the various needy people. And what we do, this is because the time what you shared, it's really very important to us. We go around, we conduct a vaccination camp, we make sure that everybody is covered, not only the first, the second vaccination. Also, we give them ration. We do night tuitions. All that we do on your behalf, because you spare your valuable time. Your time, what you invested, is what attracts large number of people to come and watch our program, that add to our branding. Thank you so much, Radhika. Thank you, Mythili. As usual, great evening. And thank you, Mr. Balraman. And we're all looking forward to next one, Gurgaon, where the woman power, when they get together, I think is unbeatable. Everybody must come and listen to that on 16th evening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for your feedback, which is excellent. And till we meet again, bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.